Would you destroy the One Ring, or would you become your own Lord of the Ring? You can with Manly Bands. Shop the officially licensed Lord of the Rings collection. Become a ring bearer of the One Ring, or snag a Gandalf-inspired band. Shop 20% off your entire order with an exclusive discount code on the Lore of the Rings website, ringspodcast.com. Visit ringspodcast.com, tap the discounts button at the top, and grab that discount code to get 20% off your entire order from Manly Bands.
Entertainment Radio would like you to listen to the classic radio shows of The New Adventures of Sherlock Holmes, was a highly popular old-time radio show broadcast in the United States, featuring Basil Rathbone and Nigel Bruce from October 1939 to July 1947. The scripts were penned by Edith Meiser, Dennis Green, and Anthony Boucher. Basil Rathbone and Nigel Bruce teamed up for 220 episodes, portraying Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson, respectively. To listen to the shows, visit My Classic Radio at www.myclassicradio.net.
We uncover the mystique of opposites blending in Tom Bombadil's enchanted house. From the harmonious union of Tom and Goldberry to the symbolism of wood, water, and hill, we'll dive deep into how Tolkien masterfully weaves this theme throughout the chapter in the House of Tom Bombadil from Fellowship of the Ring. I'm Aaron, your host and fellow Middle-earth wanderer, and this is Lore of the Rings, where we wander the world and works of J.R.R. Tolkien. Big announcement, the Lore of the Rings podcast has a new website. At ringspodcast.com, you can listen to the latest episodes, find previous episodes, contact me, find the show's social accounts, and most importantly, my recommendations and discounts on your favorite Lord of the Rings products, like 25% off your entire order from Manly Bands. As I find more deals and I have more recommendations for you, you can find them on the discounts page on the site. Visit ringspodcast.com to check it out. And if you are just joining us on this wandering of Middle-earth, then welcome. We've been exploring the Fellowship of the Ring at a pace of about 5 or so pages per episode. If you'd like to get the whole journey from page 1 of the Fellowship of the Ring, then start back at episode 138 and catch back up. And if you'd like to dig into the origins of the whole legendarium, then episode 1 is a wonderful place to start. Now, let's wander. We have been wandering in the third age of Middle-earth. Frodo has left the Shire with the One Ring and has found rest and refuge in the house of an uncanny character, Tom Bombadil and his wife, Goldberry. Today's episode is our third look at the chapter in the House of Tom Bombadil from J.R.R. Tolkien's Fellowship of the Ring. Honestly, I thought we would only spend like 2 episodes here, but as I read it and unpacked what I found, I was just blown away by all the themes, the history, and the ancientness that Tom represents. So today we'll be going deeper on some themes that we've seen before. Theme number 1 to explore further. In a word, blending. We saw this theme in the equality and mixture of Tom and Goldberry together, and we're about to see this theme go even deeper. They are the melding of opposites. But this theme also shows up in the inversion of common motifs and symbols that we'll see later on. Let's take a look at the room where the hobbits wake up. It has windows that face both west and east. And shout out to the wonderful book The Atlas of Middle-earth by Karen Wynne Fonstad. She has printed a little floor plan of Tom's house, and it's easy to see the gardens and features that Frodo and Pippin see as they look out the windows. You can find a link to that excellent book on the discounts page at ringspodcast.com. What I find interesting is that Tom's house is right in the middle. It's situated between the east and west. Frodo looks out the east window to see a kitchen garden and the hill that marks the beginning of the hill country. He also sees signs of rain for the day. Pippin looks out the west window, where he sees the Withywindle Valley through the fog. But to zoom out, the vast epic battle for good versus evil in Lord of the Rings is somewhat synonymous with the west versus the east. And no, I don't mean those terms for how we use them today in a political or cultural sense. For Middle-earth, it was simply practical geography. Sauron's fortresses lay in the east and south, the good people's in the west and north. You'll often find that individuals will look east with foreboding, especially in Gondor. Another interesting take on this theme of blending is the inversion of the eye symbol. We are all familiar with the glowing red eye above the Tower of Barad-dûr that is in dire need of some eye drops. While not in the book, that was Peter Jackson's way of giving Sauron screen time. Nevertheless, the red eye, the singular eye always spying out but never examining inward, is a common motif in Lord of the Rings. But look at Tom's eyes in this chapter. As he is sharing tales with the hobbits, we're told that he would suddenly look at the hobbits, quote, with a bright blue eye. I find it curious that the eye here is singular, as if Tom is some sort of proto-symbol for the red eye of Sauron. We'll dig into this more when we examine the scene where Tom asks for the One Ring, but that'll probably be the next episode. Even more interesting for now are the tales that Tom shares, and notice how the content of these tales is the blending of opposites. Quote, he told them tales of bees and flowers, the ways of trees and the strange creatures of the forest, about evil things and good things, things friendly and things unfriendly, cruel things and kind things, and secrets hidden under brambles. Tom knows many things, and he doesn't shy away from things good or evil. He can speak about both. He understands both sides. He seems to be neutral towards each side. But let's not forget Goldberry. She too seems to be a blend of opposites. Consider this moment. When Tom is telling them about the historic tales, he mentions some pretty dark stuff, including a reference to the Dark Lord. At that moment, a shadow passes by. In Lord of the Rings, a shadow and evil are often associated together. Indeed, one of the titles for Sauron is the Shadow, capital S. In this moment, the hobbits are stunned by the shadow, but soon realize it is only Goldberry. And while she seemed like a shadow before, she is actually, quote, framed in light. Even Goldberry is connected with the blending theme. Is she shadow or is she light? Or perhaps she is somehow beyond that duality. Goldberry even says that Tom hops on the hills, quote, under light and shadow. They both are the blending of these two opposites. As on the previous night, Tom and Goldberry together, without servants, prepare the table for dinner. The narrator is careful to call out how different and opposite the two hosts are. Goldberry is fair and graceful, while Tom is merry and odd. Even the hobbits are taken into this blending theme, as they feel both wonder and joy at the dance their hosts perform. I find this line to be the most key in expounding on this theme of blending. Even after calling attention to their opposite natures, the narrator then shares, quote, yet in some fashion they seemed to weave a single dance, neither hindering the other, in and out of the room, and round about the table, and with great speed food and vessels and lights were set in order. I really love this idea, the blending of opposites, that is represented here by Tom and Goldberry. We've seen this theme in so many other places within the Legendarium. The blending of immortal elf maiden and mortal man in Luthien and Beren. Check out episodes 20 through 24, and again in Arwen and Aragorn. It's a companion theme to another odd blending, that through sorrow comes beauty and wisdom. That theme is perhaps the most common in Tolkien's The Silmarillion. In another way, this blending shows the view of good and evil in Middle-earth. The best way I can describe this is to contrast it with Star Wars. In Star Wars, good and evil are a dichotomy, a duality to be constantly balanced. But this is different in Middle-earth. All that is good is beauty, perfection. Evil is the corruption of that beauty, the marring of that perfection. But even evil can be turned to miraculous good, and the growth and wisdom of those who learn to outlast and overcome. And Tom and Goldberry are the perfect personification of that theme. Now before we get to our next theme, you may be thinking, who is my complimentary companion in exploring Middle-earth? Tom needs a Goldberry, and you need a fellow wanderer to join you on your journey. Take a moment to tap that share button and send this episode to a friend. You can even take a screenshot of your podcast app playing this episode and post it on Instagram or Twitter. If you tag me, I will respond. For theme number 2 today, let's take a closer look at Goldberry, starting with her voice. As the hobbits finish their breakfast, the rain is just beginning and they hear Goldberry singing. Remember, Tolkien loves employing similes when it comes to Tom and Goldberry, and you'll see that here as we review Goldberry's descriptions. Let's see if we can spot a few patterns. From the previous chapter, quote, another clear voice, as young and as ancient as spring, like the song of a glad water flowing down into the night from a bright morning in the hills, came falling like silver to meet them. This next one, not her voice, but her movements, quote, the sound of her footsteps was like a stream falling gently away downhill over cool stones in the quiet of the night. And the new description for this episode, quote, "There came falling gently, as if it was flowing down the rain out of the sky, the clear voice of Goldberry singing up above them." What patterns do you see? Goldberry is for sure connected to water, but what kind of water and in what direction does it flow? Her voice is like a stream flowing downhill or rain falling from the sky, always gentle, always clear. We know that she is the river daughter, so Tom calls her and she calls herself, but it's almost as if her singing is causing the rain, that she has some influence over the weather in that corner of the world. Indeed, Tom says that it's, quote, Goldberry's washing day, a fact that is later confirmed when Tom appears at the supper dressed, quote, all in clean blue. Let's return to a scene we looked at before. When Tom is telling tales and Goldberry comes as a seeming shadow but is holding a candle. She is holding her hand in front of the candle, yet the light is still shining through her hand, quote, like sunlight through a white shell. A small detail, surely. And yet my family has been visiting the beach nearly every day this summer, and without a doubt my kindergarten-aged daughter returns with a bucket of seashells. Shells are most often found by water. Goldberry is again connected with water, even in the tiniest of details. When her labors are ended, so is the rain, with the desired result being, quote, new waters are running downhill. Goldberry has completed her part in the water cycle. Through her rain song, the land has been cleansed, and fresh water can now flow to the places where it is needed. Goldberry is the personification of water. Not convinced on the water cycle yet? Take a closer look at what kinds of songs Goldberry sings for the hobbits after the Second Supper. Quote, songs that began merrily in the hills and fell softly down into silence. And in the silences they saw in their minds pools and waters, wider than any they had known. And looking into them they saw the sky below them, and the stars like jewels in the depths. Why, it's almost as if the hobbits have just been led to view life from the perspective of a falling raindrop. Beginning in the hills, flowing down to the pools, then being above the sky in the realm of the stars, and repeat. You might even say that Goldberry is the opposite of Tom. From her own songs, she starts in the hills, flows downhill in the streams, and pools gently within the woods, where Tom first finds her along the Withy Windle. That is the inverse of Tom's pattern, the pattern that Goldberry first mentioned to the hobbits. Where Tom is master of wood, water, and hill, Goldberry's journey has been from hills through water to woods. It's brilliant. It's simply brilliant. The way that Tolkien is able to weave these into the narrative. I'm not even sure that all of it was entirely intentional, and that's what makes it so amazing to me. If it was entirely and completely intentional, then it is straight up brilliant. But even if it's only slightly intentional, and Tolkien's just natural intuition just took it deeper and further than that only a really close reading like this will reveal, then wow, I feel a special kindred with Frodo and friends as they watch Tom and Goldberry perform their dinner dance. I stand half in wonder and half in laughter at the literary masterpiece that is The Lord of the Rings. But we have one more theme to explore. After all, Tom begins to reveal who, or what, he really is as he talks with the hobbits. More on that after this short break. We're not done yet. If you like this episode, please leave a review and share with your friends. And remember to subscribe if you haven't already. We'll be right back.
Step into the hidden corridors of the past with Hometown History, where every episode uncovers the untold stories and secrets nestled in the streets and alleys of our own backyards. We bring history to life, revealing the extraordinary in the ordinary, from local legends to forgotten tales that shape the communities we know today. Tune into Hometown History and embark on a journey through time, right from where you are.
When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Kroger, where you'll find over 30,000 mouth-watering choices that excite your inner foodie. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices, plus extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week. You can also save up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with fuel points. More savings and more inspiring flavors make shopping Kroger worth it every time. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.
Again, we ask the same question that Frodo has posed before. Who is Tom Bombadil? We've been exploring Goldberry's answer to that question. He is master of wood, water, and hill. In the previous chapter, when we first saw Tom, we saw his power over the wood. Even the great old man Willow had to obey Tom's songs. In this chapter, we see how Tom's wife is the personification of water. And before you go all modern patriarchy theory on me, remember that Goldberry corrected Frodo before. Tom is not the master because he owns or lords over the lands. He is the master because he understands them. He knows them. He knows their songs. And he accepts them. So, in that sense, Tom is the perfect husband. He knows the right songs to sing to her and perfectly understands Goldberry. In fact, by Tom's own admission, he awoke Goldberry that very day by, quote, singing under window. As the rain falls, Frodo observes Tom outside, quote, waving his arms as if he was warding off the rain. And indeed, when he sprang over the threshold, he seemed quite dry. Tom is master of water. Through his elaborate arm movements, and I would also guess a few songs and a ring-a-ding-dillos, Tom is able to keep himself dry even in the pouring rain. Let's take a closer look at the tales that Tom shares with the hobbits. And again, remember the pattern: wood, water, hill. Tom first tells them of the forest. He comprehends even the smallest of details, and knows the history and feelings of the trees in the forest. He is able to craft the feelings of the hearts of trees so well that even the hobbits begin to have some empathy for the trees. And not to mention another line that Peter Jackson lifted to be said by Treebeard in The Two Towers, quote, gnawing, biting, breaking, hacking, burning, destroyers, and usurpers. The hobbits learn the forest is ancient, and the Old Man Willow is the chief force in that realm. But suddenly, Tom's tales take a different direction. He begins speaking of streams and waterfalls and other water features. Surprised? You shouldn't be by now. And what comes next? Tales of the Downs. A quick look at a map of Middle-earth, and you'll find that the country between the Shire and Bree is covered in hills. Bree itself is built on a hill, and the hobbits will soon pass the hill of Weathertop. Closer to Tom's home is an area called the Barrow Downs, a place of terror that even the hobbits had heard of. Natural hills that had been converted into tombs for ancient kingdoms of men. There's a whole chapter about the Barrow Downs, and it's some of the scariest horror you'll find, but we'll get to that in a future episode. So, there's tales of wood, water, and hills. But what happens next is a new layer to this familiar pattern: time. And not just a little time. No, in fact, it seems that Tom has been around for all of time. He starts with what we might say is near ancient history: little kingdoms that fought over control of the hills. These are likely the three kingdoms that were formed after the northern kingdom of Arnor fell. Originally established by Elendil, Arnor collapsed and three smaller kingdoms were formed. These rival kingdoms fought for dominion, but were eventually overcome by the Witch King of Angmar, more commonly known as the Chief of the Nazgul. To dig deeper on this tale, check out episode 65. But Tom goes back even further, to the awakening of the elves by the waters of the lake Creevienin. The world was wider before the moon and sun had been created, and the elves awoke to the wonder of starlight. See episode 3 for that tale. Tom even mentions that the, quote, seas flowed straight to the western shore. This is in reference to the shaping of the world. Early in the history of the world, or Arda, the land of the Valar, the powers that govern Middle-earth, was accessible by sailing directly west across the sea. This changed after the drowning of Númenor, so that the way to Valinor was bent and no longer straight, to prevent mortals from finding the undying lands far in the west. These tales affect the hobbits in a strange way. They are enchanted. These spells have enchanted them. Time has no meaning to them anymore. Frodo feels no hunger, quote, only filled with wonder. This enchantment echoes the stillness that Frodo and Sam experienced when they first met Tom, where they had been, quote, stopped short as if they had been struck stiff. Tom's power enchants, brings stillness from chaos, and sets things in order, much like the setup on the table for the second dinner, quote, food and vessels and lights were set in order. This feeling of wonder and enchantment is something I feel when I read this chapter. And it's this sense of enchantment that marks the best and truest stories, as Tolkien described in his essay on fairy stories. But Tom has more to share. History even further back in time than the hobbits can imagine. When Frodo asks who he is again, Tom responds in part, quote, "Eldest, that's what I am." He remembers the first rain on Middle-earth, before all the history that we've explored even happened. What's more, quote, "He knew the dark under the stars when it was fearless, before the Dark Lord came from outside." Yes, Tom Bombadil was on the earth even before Morgoth, Sauron's master. That means he has been around the longest, before any other creature or feature of Middle-earth. This idea of Tom being master of wood, water, and hill, but also time, leads to another representation that I recently heard on a great article from a blog called Thoughts on Tolkien. I'll link to it in the show notes. To quote the author, quote, "Tom Bombadil represents Arda unmarred." If that phrase is unfamiliar to you, let's break it down. Arda was the Elvish word for the world, the earth that you are living on. The idea of Arda, or the world, being in a state where it was unmarred is a common theme, or perhaps the central theme of Tolkien's legendarium. Life was created in a perfect and beautiful state, and through Morgoth's interventions and other creatures' pride, the world became marred. Seeking to preserve what can be kept from that original beauty motivates the Valar, the elves, and really anyone who wants to lay hold on a Silmaril. If Tom represents Arda unmarred, then it would only be natural for him to be the master of whatever he chooses. Things in Tom's world are perfect. He is unbounded and unaffected by the things of this world, and that means that little golden rings have no power over him. But we'll get to that next time. Thank you for wandering Middle-earth with me today. My friends, if you enjoyed this episode, let me know by subscribing, leaving a review, and sharing with your friends. Follow me on Facebook or Instagram at Lore of the Rings Podcast. For feedback on the show, please email me using the link in the show notes. Until next Thursday, remember, not all those who wander are lost.
When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Kroger, where you'll find over 30,000 mouth-watering choices that excite your inner foodie. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices, plus extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week. You can also save up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with fuel points. More savings and more inspiring flavors make shopping Kroger worth it every time. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.
Every day, we rise, challenging ourselves to work for what we believe in. At U.S. Border Patrol, protecting our borders is more than a job. It's a calling. Agents answer the call, working together to keep our country and communities safe. If you're ready for a new mission, join U.S. Border Patrol and go beyond. Learn more at cbp.gov/careers.